There are moments when the sky stops behaving like a familiar friend and begins to speak in a language we do not fully understand. This storm is one of those moments. It does not arrive quietly, nor does it follow the gentle agreements we once believed governed wind, water, and cloud. It rises beyond prediction, beyond pattern, beyond the careful models we built with confidence, and in that rising it asks something deeper of us. Not fear, but awareness. For a long time we trusted that every storm could be measured, named, and contained within the limits of human understanding. We drew lines on maps, created simulations, and believed that knowledge alone could give us control. But now we stand before something that moves faster than expectation, shifts without warning, and reshapes itself beyond every forecast model we have relied on. This is not just a failure of systems. It is a reminder of something we quietly forgot. Nature does not obey our certainty. Look closely at what is happening. The winds do not simply blow, they spiral with unusual intensity. The rain does not fall, it pours with a persistence that feels almost intentional. Patterns that once repeated with comfort now dissolve into unpredictability. It is as if the storm carries a message, not in words but in force, a message that asks us to listen rather than assume. And yet, within this intensity, there is also clarity. When something breaks every model, it clears away illusion. It shows us where we depended too much on fixed ideas, where we mistook probability for truth. The storm becomes a mirror, reflecting not just the atmosphere, but the limits of our own thinking. In that reflection, there is an opportunity, not to resist reality, but to understand it more deeply. Fear arises easily in such moments. The unknown often invites it, but fear clouds perception, and what is needed now is clear seeing, to observe without panic, to respond without haste, to act with awareness. This is where true strength lies. The storm may be unprecedented, but our ability to meet it with steadiness is not beyond reach. Consider how everything in nature adapts. Trees bend to survive the wind. Rivers change course when faced with resistance. Even the smallest elements adjust continuously without attachment to what once was. There is a quiet wisdom in this flexibility, a wisdom that does not fight change but moves with it. Perhaps this storm, in its overwhelming presence, is guiding us back to that same understanding. This does not mean inaction. It does not mean ignoring danger. It means responding with intelligence rather than panic, with preparation rather than denial. When the familiar structures fail, awareness becomes our most reliable guide. We begin to rely not just on models, but on observation, cooperation, and presence. There is also a deeper question hidden within this moment. What does it mean when the systems we trusted can no longer keep up with reality? It invites us to rethink not only how we predict storms, but how we relate to the world itself. Are we separate observers trying to control or participants learning to understand? The answer shapes everything that follows. As this storm continues to unfold, breaking records and defying expectations, it reminds us of the vastness we are part of. It humbles the mind that seeks certainty and awakens the awareness that accepts change. In that awakening, there is strength. Not the strength of control, but the strength of presence. So let us not meet this moment with denial or blind fear. Let us meet it with clarity. Let us observe carefully, act wisely, and remain grounded even as the winds rise. For while the storm may be unprecedented, the calm within us does not have to be shaken. And perhaps, when it passes, as all storms eventually do, we will not only see the changes it left behind in the world, but also the shift it created within us. A quieter mind, a deeper awareness, and a renewed respect for the forces we once believed we had fully understood. Limits of human prediction. The storm highlights how even advanced forecast models can fail, reminding us that nature cannot always be controlled or fully understood. For a long time, we have lived with the quiet confidence that the world around us can be measured, predicted, and understood through the tools we have created. We built systems to track the winds, to calculate the movement of storms, and to anticipate what comes next. These systems gave us a sense of control, a belief that with enough data and precision, nothing could truly surprise us. Yet this storm stands as a powerful reminder that our understanding, no matter how advanced, still has limits. When something breaks every forecast model we have, it does more than disrupt our plans. It challenges the very foundation of our certainty. It reveals that nature does not operate within the boundaries we assign to it. The equations, the simulations, and the predictions are only reflections of what we think we know, not the full truth of what is. And when reality moves beyond those reflections, we are left facing something raw and undeniable. This is not a failure in the sense of defeat, but a moment of awakening. It shows us that knowledge is not the same as mastery. We may observe patterns, but we do not command them. We may analyze behavior, but we do not dictate it. The storm, in its unpredictability, strips away the illusion that we are in complete control and replaces it with a more honest understanding of our place within the natural world. There is a quiet lesson here, one that does not shout but becomes clear when we are willing to see it. Instead of clinging to certainty, we are invited to embrace humility. Instead of assuming control, we are encouraged to deepen our awareness. Because when we accept that there are limits to what we can predict, we open ourselves to a different kind of intelligence, one that is flexible, observant, and responsive. In this way, the storm becomes more than a physical event. It becomes a teacher. It reminds us that the world is not static, not fixed, and not bound by our expectations. And when we understand this, we begin to move differently. We become less rigid in our thinking and more attentive to what is actually unfolding. This shift, though subtle, is powerful. It allows us to respond to reality as it is, rather than as we assumed it would be. So while the storm may unsettle our systems, it also offers clarity. It shows us where our knowledge ends and where true awareness must begin. And in recognizing that boundary, we find not weakness, but a deeper, more grounded strength. Nature's unpredictable power. This event shows that natural forces can behave beyond established patterns, challenging our assumptions about stability and predictability. There are times when nature moves in ways that feel familiar, following patterns we have come to recognize and trust. The seasons change, the winds shift, the clouds gather and release, all within a rhythm that gives us comfort. But then there are moments like this, when that rhythm breaks, when the expected becomes uncertain, and the storm no longer follows the script we believed it would. In such moments, we are reminded that predictability is not a guarantee, but a temporary alignment we have grown used to. This storm does not simply arrive, it transforms. Its movement is irregular. Its intensity fluctuates beyond what was anticipated, and its path resists the neat lines drawn by our forecasts. What once appeared stable begins to shift, and the patterns we relied on start to dissolve. It is in this dissolution that the true nature of uncertainty reveals itself. Not as chaos, but as a deeper complexity we have yet to fully understand. We often mistake repetition for permanence. When something happens the same way enough times, we begin to believe it will always be so. This belief quietly shapes how we think, how we prepare, and how we respond. But nature does not promise consistency. It evolves, adjusts, and sometimes moves in ways that seem entirely new. The storm becomes a living example of this truth, showing us that what we consider normal is only a small window within a much larger reality. There is a subtle invitation within this experience. It asks us to look beyond fixed expectations and to become more present with what is actually unfolding. When we stop forcing reality to match our assumptions, we begin to see more clearly. The wind is no longer just stronger than expected. It is simply strong. The rain is not unexpectedly heavy. It is heavy. In this shift of perception, we move from resistance to understanding. This does not remove the seriousness of the situation, nor does it lessen the need for caution. Rather, it sharpens our awareness. We begin to respond not from outdated expectations, but from direct observation. This kind of clarity is powerful because it allows us to act in alignment with reality rather than in conflict with it. As the storm continues to unfold in ways that challenge our assumptions, It gently breaks the illusion that the world must behave according to our predictions. And in that breaking, it offers a deeper insight, that true stability does not come from expecting the world to remain the same, but from learning how to remain steady within change itself. Need for awareness over fear instead of reacting with panic. The situation calls for calm observation, clarity, and thoughtful response. When fear rises, it often does so quickly, like a sudden gust that catches the mind off guard. The unknown has a way of stirring unease, especially when what unfolds defies every expectation we once held. This storm, in its intensity and unpredictability, easily becomes a source of that fear. It challenges the sense of safety we quietly build through routine and understanding. Yet in the midst of such uncertainty, fear, though natural, is not always the most helpful guide. Fear narrows perception. It pushes the mind to react before it fully sees. It creates urgency sometimes where patience is needed, and confusion where clarity could exist. When we are driven only by fear, we lose the ability to observe carefully. We begin to imagine outcomes rather than understand the present moment, and in doing so, we may miss what is actually happening right before us. This is why awareness becomes essential. Awareness does not ignore danger, nor does it deny the seriousness of the storm. Instead, it allows us to face it directly, without distortion. It invites us to look clearly at the conditions around us, the movement of the wind, the rising of the lemai, the signals that indicate what may come next. From this place of clear seeing, our actions become more precise, more thoughtful, and more effective. There is a quiet strength in remaining steady while everything else feels unsettled. It is not the absence of emotion, but the ability to not be controlled by it. When the mind is calm, it becomes like still water, reflecting reality without distortion. In that reflection, we can recognize what needs to be done and what can be let go. Decisions made from this state carry a different quality. They are grounded, not rushed, responsive, not reactive. Nature itself demonstrates this balance. Even in the midst of great turbulence, there are moments of stillness, pauses between gusts, brief silences within the storm. These moments remind us that calm is not something separate from chaos, but something that can exist within it. When we learn to find that calm within ourselves, we are no longer overwhelmed by what surrounds us. This does not mean we become passive. On the contrary, it allows us to act with greater effectiveness. A clear mind sees options where a fearful mind sees only threat. It recognizes opportunities to adapt, to prepare, to protect. It moves with intention rather than impulse. As this storm continues to test the limits of what we expected, it also reveals the importance of how we meet it internally. The outer conditions may be beyond our control, but the inner response remains within our reach. And it is this response that shapes our experience, guiding us through uncertainty with steadiness rather than struggle. Adaptation as true strength. Just like elements in nature adapt to change, humans must remain flexible and responsive rather than rigid in their thinking. In the natural world, nothing survives by remaining rigid. The tree that refuses to bend in strong wind is the one most likely to break, while the one that yields even slightly endures. Water does not resist the shape of the land, it flows around it, finding new paths without losing its essence. This quiet adaptability is not weakness, but a deeper form of strength, one that allows life to continue even in the face of constant change. When a storm defies every expectation, it asks us to embody this same flexibility. Our plans, our assumptions, even our confidence in what should happen are all tested. If we cling too tightly to what we thought was certain, we create resistance within ourselves. And that resistance often leads to frustration, confusion, and delayed response. But when we allow ourselves to adjust, to see the situation as it is rather than as we hoped, it becomes easier to move with clarity. Adaptation begins with acceptance, not a passive acceptance that gives up, but an active one that recognizes reality without denial. The storm is stronger than predicted, its path is uncertain, its impact may exceed what we prepared for. When these truths are acknowledged fully, the mind stops arguing with what is already happening and begins to focus on what can be done now. In this shift, energy is no longer wasted on resistance, but directed toward response. There is also a deeper intelligence in flexibility. It allows us to remain open, to learn in real time, to adjust our actions as new information emerges. Fixed thinking depends on the past, adaptive thinking responds to the present, and in a situation where conditions change rapidly, this ability becomes essential. It is not about having all the answers beforehand, but about staying attentive enough to respond as those answers reveal themselves. We can see this not only in nature, but in human resilience as well. Communities that adapt quickly, by sharing information, supporting one another, and adjusting their strategies, often withstand challenges more effectively than those that rely solely on rigid plans. Flexibility creates space for cooperation, for creativity, for solutions that might not have been considered before. This storm, unpredictable and powerful, becomes a living lesson in this truth. It shows that strength is not found in holding firm to what we expected, but in our ability to shift when those expectations no longer serve us. To bend without breaking, to change without losing direction. This is the balance that allows us to endure, and in learning this, something within us also transforms. We become less attached to certainty and more comfortable with change. We begin to trust not just in what we know, but in our ability to respond. And that trust, quiet and steady, becomes a foundation that no storm can easily shake. A deeper reflection on our relationship with nature, the storm encourages us to shift from trying to control the world to understanding and coexisting with it more wisely. There comes a moment, when faced with something so vast and unpredictable, that we are invited to reconsider our place in the world. For a long time, we have seen ourselves as observers standing apart from nature, studying it, measuring it, and trying to shape it according to our needs. This perspective has given us progress, but it has also created a subtle distance, a belief that we are separate from the very forces that sustain and surround us. When a storm breaks beyond all expectation, that distance begins to dissolve. It becomes clear that we are not outside the system, but within it. The same winds that move across oceans touch our lives. The same patterns that shift in the sky ripple through our communities. We are connected to these forces in ways that are both visible and unseen. And when something as powerful as this storm unfolds, it reminds us that our relationship with nature is not one of control, but of coexistence. This realization can feel unsettling at first. To let go of the idea of control is to step into uncertainty, but within that uncertainty, there is also a deeper sense of harmony waiting to be discovered. When we stop trying to dominate the natural world, we begin to listen to it. We pay closer attention to its signals, its changes, its rhythms. We become more attuned, more respectful, and more aligned with the reality we are part of. There is wisdom in this shift. It encourages us to act not as masters, but as participants, to prepare, to protect, and to respond with care, not just for ourselves, but for the environment that supports us. The storm, in its intensity, becomes a reminder that imbalance has consequences, that ignoring the delicate relationship we share with nature can lead to moments like this, where everything feels out of sync. At the same time, it offers an opportunity. When we begin to see ourselves as part of a larger whole, our actions naturally change. We become more thoughtful in how we build, how we consume, how we interact with the world around us. We start to value balance over control, understanding over assumption. This shift is not immediate, but it begins with awareness, with the simple recognition that we are connected to what we once tried to command. As the storm moves through, leaving its mark, it also leaves behind a question. How will we choose to relate to the world moving forward? Will we return to old patterns, holding tightly to the illusion of control, or will we carry this awareness with us, allowing it to guide our choices? In this question lies something powerful, because while the storm itself may pass, the understanding it brings does not have to fade. It can remain, shaping a quieter, wiser relationship with the world, one built not on dominance but on respect, balance, and a deeper sense of belonging.